This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. For lots of high school kids, senior year is a time of optimism and looking ahead. But my guest today isn't sure what's next. In April, 18-year-old Rihan was arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. He spent 2 weeks in an ICE detention facility in Plymouth, Massachusetts, the same facility that previously held his father, Zia, who had worked as an interpreter for the U.S. Army during the Afghan War. Rihan's lawyer says the detention was the result of administrative error, one that left him unable to legally work in the state. The morning Rihan was detained, ICE agents were looking for his father. His lawyer says the family has been in Connecticut legally on humanitarian parole visas since October 2024. In a statement, ICE says the agency arrested Rihan on federal immigration violations and issued him a notice to appear before a judge. All his claims will be heard, the agency says, and he will receive full due process. Today, we're asking Rihan and his family about what happened in April and what comes next. We're using their first names only for their safety and the safety of their family in Afghanistan. We recorded this conversation at their kitchen table, which included a spread of warm spiced tea, nuts, golden raisins, and fruit, a tradition of hospitality in Afghanistan when guests come. You'll also hear from Samantha Rosenberg, the Board of Education chair in Cheshire. And later in the show, the family's attorney, Lauren C. Peterson, joins us. Here's my conversation with Rihan, Zia, and Samantha Rosenberg. We talked a couple of weeks before Rihan's high school graduation. So Rihan, I just want to start with you here and ask, first of all, thank you for talking with me.
You're welcome.
And how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
How about you?
Not bad. Thanks for asking. It's always nice to have that asked back.
Yeah.
You have not had a typical high school student experience in many different ways, but how does it feel to be back in school?
Feeling good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What do you look forward to every day?
Just learning new things every day.
Does it excite you, learning new things?
Yeah.
What is it about learning that you love so much?
I want to be something in the future. Yeah. Like cardiac sonographer.
Can you explain what that is?
They do usually the heart ultrasounds. Yeah. With patient.
When did you realize that's something you want to do?
Like just a few months ago, I searched it online. I realized I want to be a cardiac sonographer.
I mean, it's amazing to hear what you want to do. That's not something that you hear a typical high school. I mean, you're not a typical high school student, but it's not something that you hear very often. So I want you to describe to me, what is a typical day like for you as a high school student? You know, when you go to school, what is that like?
It's normal. I just walked around school and then the classes start and go to the first class and the second one and the third one. Yeah, just usually that.
So I would like you to take us back to the day that you had your detention. When did that happen?
On April 6th, in the morning, it was 8:15. There was, I think, 5 or 4 ICE cars, and they pulled us over. Then they asked about my father, and he wasn't with us in our car. And then they asked about my ID and my brother's ID, and I told my date of birth and my name. And then they searched online, looked up online, or maybe whatever they did. And then they said your ID is, your status is expired, and we need to detain you. Yeah. And then they detained me. They put a handcuff on my hands, and they drove me to the Cheshire Police Department. And after that, they drove me to the Hartford, and from Hartford, they directly drove me to the Plymouth County and Boston.
When that was happening, you know, I cannot imagine what that was like. Do you remember what was going through your head? Do you know what was happening?
I didn't know about anything at that time.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned where you were. Did you see anyone your same age?
There was one guy. He was also a high school student, and none of the other guys, like all of them were just like over 20 or 19, yeah. Like 40, 50 maybe.
Well, I thought I would transition, Zia or Sam, if you wanted to add on to this. What was going through your minds when you realized what was going on?
No, I was just sleeping. It was in the morning time. I was in my bed. So my brother walking back because he took both of my sons. They were going somewhere. So when he came inside, he told me that someone is calling you. So once I come out, we didn't know that that kind of situation have taken place. So he said that he mentioned his name, that he was dropped down from the car, and they took him, and his mother was just shouting and she was crying. She was just hitting her face, and why it happened, like it was just like a nightmare. It was a very bad situation. Yes.
Sam, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
I had gotten a text from the child advocate. My first reaction, it's a nightmare, but it was also anger. Why is this happening in our town? This is not Cheshire. Just the sheer thought of where was the due process? You just took him. So, there was a lot of anger and frustration and confusion, and just trying to keep everybody as informed as possible too. On a personal note, my family are immigrants who are refugees who came here from the Vietnam into the Cambodian Civil War. So I kind of have this frightened feeling too, that here we are, we were invited to come to the country, and I consider them like, you're now taking our family that are personally, we didn't do anything wrong. We're citizens of this town. We're following the rules, if you will, and playing by the book. And all of a sudden, this is what you do. And that just is a whole bag of emotions in and of itself. So for me, it was kind of reliving somewhat of a trauma. And I know this whole process, Rihan, is trauma. And so I'm hoping that there's positivity, that you're able to at least kind of, don't ever forget, but I hope that there's positivity that eventually comes out of this, the fact that you're doing this, Catherine, to highlight. But yeah, there was a lot of emotions.
And Rihan, did you know when you were away that people here were so worried, so angry, and trying to get you back?
Yeah.
How did that make you feel? What was going through your mind?
I wasn't too afraid. I was thinking that I will get out soon from the detention. Yeah.
And I imagine that was helpful for you to process what was going on, because I can't imagine what was going on.
Yeah.
Zia, what about yourself? When something like this happens and you see the community come together in this way, of course, it's a very unfortunate circumstance why it's happening. But what was going through your mind when you're seeing people come out and speak for you and cry for you and be angry for you?
Like, you were asking about when I was there?
Sure.
Actually, I used to be watching TV, but in Boston, the channels were different. So I used to hear from my brother and from my family that there are more people behind you and more supporter you have, and everybody is very upset about you. So this was a thing that used to be giving me a courage. So I really appreciate them. Yeah, it was very good.
And Rihan, how long were you there?
I think I was there for 15 days or 16.
Sounds like you were very optimistic that you were going to make it to graduation.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations
Thank
that's happening. Do you know where you're going next? What's next for you?
Once I get everything done, like my legal status, my driving license, and everything like that, I will study at the college for 2 years, and after that, I'll go to a private college.
That was Rihan, the Cheshire teen who was detained by ICE in April. We talked 2 weeks before his high school graduation. You also heard from Rihan's father, Zia, and Samantha Rosenberg, chair of the Cheshire Board of Education. When we get back, Rihan describes how it felt to be released from ICE custody, and his father shares his hopes for Rihan's future if the family is allowed to stay in the United States.
We just want him to be graduated, study high education, to work for this country, to help this community. So that's our dream.
From Connecticut Public Radio, I'm Catherine Shen. This is Where We Live. Stay with us. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Today, we're talking to Rihan, the Cheshire teen from Afghanistan who was detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement for 2 weeks in April. Zia, Rihan's father, is also with us. He worked as an interpreter for the U.S. Army during the Afghan War. He was also detained by ICE earlier in a separate incident in July of 2025. We are using first names only for Rihan and Zia for their safety and the safety of their family in Afghanistan. Samantha Rosenberg is also still with us. She's the Cheshire Board of Ed chair. In our first segment, we talk with Rihan, Zia, and Samantha about those initial ICE detainments and the community's response. We'll pick up with the aftermath of Rihan's detention and the family's hopes for his future and what needs to happen for Rihan to be able to attend college and achieve his dream of obtaining permanent legal status in the U.S. and working in healthcare. Before he was detained by ICE, Rihan had been working odd jobs after school, saving up to get his driver's license. He knew he needed to be able to drive to a part-time job in town. After his detention, Rihan was forced to put his plan on hold. When he went to the DMV to test for a driver's license, he was turned away.
They have taken everything off mine, like my legal status and everything like that. I don't have anything now to move forward in the future. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you help us understand when you found out you were being released? What happened after that?
I was happy. Yeah.
Was it an easy process? And when I say easy, I understand it's not an easy process, but was it pretty straightforward?
Yeah. I got by on April 20 and they released me on April 21st. They just called me in the morning to bring your card and we will do the process and get you out of here.
What was the environment like there?
Or just a bunch of rooms, upstairs and downstairs. There was one outside when the people was playing basketball. Yeah, for basketball.
And Sam, when you and the community learned that he was being released, I imagine the emotions were very complicated.
Absolutely. I think it was still that lingering, the first question of why did you take him? We didn't have that answered for us still. Yes, there's a relief, but you've already caused trauma to him, to the family, without giving us a rationale or a reason why that was necessary, without providing that kind of common sense due process, if you will, if something was done wrong, So it was good to hear, but at the same time, we as a school system also want to make sure that we're prepared to support you and your family. The school system in itself already has, we've increased our social emotional and trauma informed practices. And so this is kind of a unique situation where we've never dealt with it before, but we're going to try to figure it out and make sure that this never happens to another person ever again. Mm. But a lot of questions still unanswered, just fueling that anger too. This wasn't a fair process. This shouldn't have happened. So there's still a lot more that we feel as a school system, as a community, that we need to do in hopes the immigrant community feels safe to be here.
Well, and talking about safety, Rihan, you've already gone through something that is unimaginable for a lot of people. And you came home to a press conference. So that is not another typical thing for a high school student to go through. So you were there when the press conference happened.
Yeah.
What did it mean for you to see that happen? Everyone there kind of speaking for you and standing up for you.
It means for me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In what way? Like, do you feel loved? Do you feel safer, as what Sam was saying, trying to make the place...
I feel safer, yeah. Like, a lot of people are supporting me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Zia, with this experience with Rihan, what would you like people to know that would help make the neighborhood safer and the students safer and just your community safer? Especially with your own experience. I can't imagine what you're carrying yourself.
What can I say about this thing? How can I explain that? We are all like the whole community. We are all like just brother and sister. We are all just like a one family. Mm. So we have to stand with each other. We have to help each other. We should support each other. That is the only thing, that being a neighbor, that's everybody's responsibility to be nice with each other, to help each other.
Well, I guess I kind of want to get an idea. Sam, what are some next steps for you, especially from a school standpoint and where you're coming from?
This is a community where if something does happen, where we're going to surround you with as much love and as much care as we can. And we want to keep that message going because this is that type of town. This is that type of school. So I'm sure there's been some vicarious trauma, with your siblings and so forth. We're focused on providing resources. If they reached out tomorrow, we're there for you.
And what about you, Zia? What are you focused on right now, especially with Rihan's future?
We just want him to be graduated and to go further, like forward, like study high education, get more knowledge, to help this country, to work for this country, to help these people, to help this community, to help the place where he works. So that's our dream. Yes.
And Sam, as we're talking about hopes and dreams, and you're in a space where you hear from a lot of young people and their hopes and dreams, and sitting here together with Rihan and Zia and his family, what are your thoughts when you hear that they have dreams that they want to turn into reality?
My answer is, number one, I'm here because I don't ever want anybody to limit you, even yourself. And so I feel good that you're going to move forward and just keep going, just keep swimming, as they say, Dory. And so it just makes me feel good that, these things that happen in your life don't prevent you from just chasing after your dreams and making it happen. The other piece of it is to make sure that while you're chasing, just know that there's still people here at home cheering you on. And should you ever, have a moment where you need us, we're still here.
That was Samantha Rosenberg, chair of the Cheshire Board of Education. She was talking with Rihan, the Cheshire team from Afghanistan who was detained by ICE in April. We also heard from Zia, Rihan's father. He was detained by ICE in July of 2025. Coming up, Rihan's lawyer helps us understand the impacts of ICE detention and what comes next.
It upends their lives, and then they have to do a lot of scrambling to try to reestablish their life as it was before detention, which is really difficult, it's expensive, and discouraging.
From Connecticut Public Radio, I'm Catherine Shen. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Earlier, we heard from Rihan, the Cheshire teen from Afghanistan who was detained by ICE in April. We also heard from Zia, Rihan's father. He worked as an interpreter for the U.S. Army during the Afghan War. He was also detained by ICE in a separate incident in July of 2025. We are using first names only for their safety and the safety of their family in Afghanistan. Rihan graduated from high school last week, and he wants to stay in the United States and start college courses online before attending a state community college. Joining us now to highlight the challenges immigrants like Rihan and his family face when seeking permanent legal status is immigration attorney Lauren C. Peterson. Lauren is Rihan's lawyer. Thank you so much for being with us, Lauren.
Thanks for having me.
So I understand Zia's family, his wife and 5 children, came to the United States in 2024 on what's called a humanitarian parole visa. Can you explain to us what that is?
So there's a process through which someone can apply to USCIS to be permitted temporarily, or I should say on a temporary basis, into the United States because they're facing targeted harm in their home country. In 2021, after the Taliban took over the government of Afghanistan, sweeping through the country and leading to the evacuation of ultimately about 90,000 Afghans by the U.S. military, many Afghans were left behind who had assisted U.S. troops and who had ultimately had viable pathways to immigrate here because of their service to the U.S., but that's a long process and weren't able to effectuate that quickly enough to get to safety. Some of those people remained in Afghanistan. Some fled to other countries, awaiting progress on their immigration cases. This was the case with Zia and Rihan, their family. Zia, as you mentioned, he had worked with U.S. troops, and they fled to Pakistan to relative safety there, not complete safety, but some relative safety there. And they put in petitions to the U.S. government via their U.S.-based relative, Zia's younger brother, who is a U.S. citizen here. They put in petitions to USCIS in which they asked to be able to come to the United States, and they supplied statements and evidence of the reasons for which they were in danger. And this is something that each member of the family had to do, although all of the danger they faced was tied into that work that the father of the family, Zia, had performed on behalf of U.S. troops. That's a slow process. It's well vetted. It's mulled over and thought about a lot at USCIS. There's nothing hasty about it. So that was a process that took about 3.5 years, ultimately, from start to finish. Some people are brought quickly. At that particular time, many people were brought quickly to the U.S. because of the evacuation, but that was not the case for this family. They waited for this process to run its course, and ultimately they were approved by immigration here, which led to them being able to apply for these humanitarian parole visas through the U.S. Embassy in Islamabad, Pakistan. And they were given travel documents and permission to travel to the United States by plane and to present these documents to customs. And they were allowed to enter the United States with a humanitarian parole non-immigrant status.
And you mentioned USCIS. Can you remind our listeners what that stands for? And I imagine this is a case-by-case basis, as you mentioned, that this process can be slow, but it just depends on the case.
Right. So USCIS is the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. It's part of the Department of Homeland Security. It's under the umbrella of DHS. And yes, each of these applications, they're not evaluated as a group, although there were, after the fall of the Afghan government or the U.S.-supported Afghan government to the Taliban, thousands of these applications were submitted on behalf of stranded Afghans to USCIS, but they were evaluated case by case, and that's why actually very few people were able to enter through this process because of the careful analysis and vetting that went on.
Is there an expiration date for the visa for the family?
Typically, this status is given for 2 years, and it's often renewable.
And so what are some next steps for Rihan and his family specifically?
So after entering the United States, there were other immigration pathways the family was eligible to pursue. One of them was specifically related to the service that Zia had performed in Afghanistan, and that's called a special immigrant visa. He had applied a few years earlier for that process. That's also a slow process. There's essentially not a fast process when it comes to immigrating to the United States, and anyone who has immigrated here, I'm sure that resonates with them. So that was still in process when he came through the humanitarian parole visa to the United States. After kind of getting their feet on the ground here, the whole family applied for green cards based on that special immigrant visa process. And those applications are actually still pending with the U.S. government. They were pending at the time that Zia was detained, and still pending the time that Rihan was detained as well.
And I know we're throwing out a lot of different processes. It does sort of highlight the amount of paperwork that people have to go through in order to come into the country, and just how much there is to navigate through. So Zia and Rihan had what are called employment and authorization documents, EADs. Can you explain what those documents mean?
Sure. So there are many different ways you can enter the United States, of course, and some of those give you permission or the ability to seek permission to work. In some cases, you are seeking actually just an identification, essentially. It is technically work authorization, but it can be someone of any age who's applying for it, but it serves as identification and proof of your non-immigrant status in the United States, but does give you permission with employers to work if you were of age to work. So that was the case with this family.
In terms of Zia and Rihan's EADs, were they revoked before or after their respective detentions?
Those EADs, their work permits, were revoked after their detentions, and that's because they're based on a specific status. That was their humanitarian parole status. And because that status was revoked upon their detentions, so was their ability to work.
And so just to kind of broaden it out and give a bit more background information, the Trump administration is currently detaining thousands of immigrants, but a recent political analysis found judges are overturning the vast majority of these ICE detentions. So if the detentions aren't likely to lead to deportation, why do you think the administration is pursuing them?
First of all, it's a great show of force. It's very intimidating. It's terrifying to immigrants who are here. I've had so many people approach me who even are naturalized citizens saying, could I be detained? No one wants to be detained. That's a horrible experience. It's so scary. So first of all, it's very intimidating. It's causing people to choose to self-deport, or even sometimes people who have some form of status are choosing to leave because they don't want to risk detention. But additionally, it's a bit of a game. As you've identified, many people are being detained who ultimately there's no basis for their detention, but it puts them into immigration proceedings. It causes their statuses to be revoked. It upends their lives, and then they have to do a lot of scrambling to try to reestablish their life as it was before detention, which again is really difficult. It's expensive and discouraging.
Are you surprised by the amount of detention cases that are flooding into courthouses right now?
I'm not surprised because courthouses are the only place to fight it right now. There's not a great way to otherwise protect against it. Having worked for quite a while now with the USCIS side of immigration, which is essentially helping people pursue their immigration benefits, whether that is a green card, whether that's naturalization, whether that's work authorization. Those systems are breaking down right now. The government has made it very difficult on many different fronts to be able to obtain work authorization even when you're entitled to it, to be able to obtain a green card even when you've met all the criteria and you've paid for your application and submitted it. There are so many ways in which this has become protracted and painful for people. And so when I've tried to help clients guard against the possibility of detention, those things aren't working. People are being detained anyway because those potential protections are falling away. Then we end up, well, where do we fight this? Well, you end up fighting it in the courts.
How does Rihan's detention and Zia's before that compare to the immigration cases that you've been a part of in recent years?
If you mean over the past year, unfortunately, there are a lot of fairly comparable cases. I've seen a lot of people be detained who were here with a lawful status, and essentially they're detained, and then a lawyer finds a way to get them out. The detention was baseless, but causes just a big chain reaction of problems in their lives. And often those people do ultimately end up deciding that they should try to find some way to return home, even when they don't think that home is safe right now.
Rihan spoke about his experience with ICE in a very calm and almost matter-of-fact way. You also represented his father, Zia, when he was detained, and you're now representing the whole family as they navigate this very complicated process. What's your impression of Rihan and his family?
Anyone who has met this family knows that they're mild-mannered, careful individuals who are really just they're this lovely presence in the world, right? They're the least likely people to intentionally do anything that would be wrong or that would offend anyone else, or they're very cautious people. They're people who play by the rules. They're people who have, I think by nature, but also because of what life has thrown on them, they're very patient people. They've waited a long time for the ability to come here. They're continuing to wait very patiently for us to try to work out what's happening to them right now.
Well, when we were in the room speaking with them, you could really feel that tension and the pressure that they're under, but you also felt the family's joy of being in presence with each other and sharing their stories. And Rihan loves to read, just like any person really around. And I know we've walked through a lot of what they have gone through and what the processes is like for anyone similar who has to go through this. But what else do you want people to know about what this process has been like for the family?
Nothing has gone as they thought it would. That's not quite right. I think for the first several months in the United States proved to be what they had dreamed for years it might be. People who engage in these immigration processes from abroad, they have a long time to picture what their future lives in the United States are going to look like, right? Years and years of wondering and planning. And I think initially, although I'm sure there were some surprises about what America was really like and how the world worked here, I think that was pretty much going as more or less as they had imagined it to be. But now so many very difficult things have unfolded for them, and not through any fault of their own. And I think that that capriciousness and really kind of the cruelty inherent in it has been really difficult. It's not what they thought America was going to be like. It's certainly not what some other immigrants, that they're close to, family members that are here, had experienced with the United States. And that's been incredibly hard. Just the ability to know what tomorrow brings, to know you're not going to be detained, or to have an expectation you won't be detained, the ability to work and support yourself, being able to have expectations like that, that's been taken away from them. And so the past several months have been just really difficult for the whole family.
Well, we've been talking about Zia and Rihan. Mom and 4 younger siblings or 4 younger children are also around. What worries you the most about the family?
What worries me most, well, I'm an immigration lawyer, so what worries me the most is that somehow their processes won't work out and they'll end up being returned to danger. And that danger is very real. But I also worry about just how these young children who are now coming of age in the United States still feel utterly like the other here in the U.S. I have every reason to believe that ultimately they'll be able to remain here. They should be able to remain here. They've done all the things right. But the feelings that will have come from these months and probably ultimately years of struggle to establish what their rightful status is here in the United States, and their ability to feel like they're not on the edge of a knife, that they could be detained at any moment or deported at any moment. I hate to think of these young children growing up feeling that way, and I know that's not a unique experience to them. So many people grow up in that setting, but it's a feeling of not belonging in this country isn't really a place where you're going to be able to come into your own. That troubles me.
And the idea of it being dangerous to go back to one's home country feels like it gets lost in the shuffle of conversation sometimes. What are some of the realities or best or worst case scenarios for the family and Afghan asylum seekers more broadly? What could happen to them if they go home?
There are some really terrible possible outcomes for Afghan asylum seekers right now if they end up having to return to Afghanistan. And not only would that be the case for Zia, the dad, specifically because of his assistance to U.S. troops, this would also be the case for mom and daughters, and these are for somewhat different reasons. Anyone can, Google and should be able to quickly learn, if they don't know already, the extreme danger that someone who assisted U.S. troops is in Afghanistan today. This wasn't just true in 2021. This continues through today. The likelihood of being detained or tortured or executed or, extrajudicial killings, that continues in a very real way today for people who are perceived as sympathizers with Western governments, much less if there's proof that you actually aided a Western government, as Zia did. But I believe that Afghanistan is currently ranked the worst in the world for women and girls. So a girl is not permitted to have an education beyond elementary school right now. And most don't actually attend elementary school education, but they're not even allowed under the law to have education beyond that. And options for working and participating in society for a woman are extremely, extremely limited. It's so repressive for women. And something that is very true of this family is that they are educated people. They are contributors. I can't imagine a scenario in which those younger sisters that Rihan has aren't permitted to attend school, aren't permitted to go out shopping or go to the doctor by themselves, right? And that's true in Afghanistan right now.
And I know we've gone through a lot of experiences and challenges specific to the family, but also not unique to the family. What do you want people to understand more about how current immigration policies are playing out across the country and also here in Connecticut more specifically?
Yeah. There's a lot of attention given to detention, as it should be, because that's the primary tool and kind of the most flashy tool that the government is using right now to both deport and just to deter. But the government is trying very successfully right now to make it painful for immigrants to remain in the United States. And that is in regard, especially in many ways, but it's especially relevant to people who are lawfully here. So people pursuing immigration pathways who have permission to remain here. But the government has taken many steps, and they get some publicity, but it's certainly less publicized. People aren't necessarily out protesting about it, but removing opportunities for work authorization, making it so that people aren't able to extend or renew work authorization even though they are eligible for it. Putting long-term holds on benefits like work authorization or green cards for people of certain nationalities. This has been extremely painful. There is a point at which an immigrant family, when they can't support themselves, at least legally can't work to support themselves, they're going to have to throw in the towel. This is just the most fundamental level on survival. It's survival. And so these are pain points. And right now, the Department of Homeland Security is really utilizing many different methods to make lawful immigration extraordinarily painful. This is affecting so many of my clients right now.
And Rihan has shared with us his own hopes and dreams. What do you hope and dream for, Rihan?
Oh, my hopes in some ways are very small. I just want him to have a moment in his life when he doesn't worry he's going to be detained when he walks out the door. That's the first thing. But that ties into my larger dream, which is that he can come to a point where he feels the peace in his heart, knowing that this is home, that that's not going to change, and that he can build instead of just kind of being in a defensive posture.
You've been listening to Lauren C. Peterson, who is a private practice immigration attorney in New Haven and the founding and executive director of Pavilion Immigrant Assistance in Hartford. Lauren's also a co-managing attorney for the American Immigrant Legal Clinic in New Haven. Lauren, thank you so much for your time and for explaining all of that to us and for sharing your experiences with us.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
I'm Catherine Shen. Today's show was produced and edited by Robin Doyon-Aiken. Our technical producer is Dylan Reyes. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app. And thank you so much for listening.